Today we are looking at The Last God, book 1 of the Fellspire Chronicles. Author is Philip Kennedy Johnson. Main artist is Riccardo Federici. Now this collects a series of comics, issues 1 through 12 of The Last God from 2019 to 2020. But the publishing date of this collection is 2021. Published by DC Comics, which I'm not personally a big fan of sort of the big two DC and Marvel comics at this point in history, but this kind of breaks the mold for me. This is not the usual fare that you get from those big two. Physically, the book is very well put together. Now it comes with this glossy cover on it, which, I'm not a big fan of glossy dust jackets, but this one in particular, I don't think I can get this all in camera here, but it opens up to reveal a really large map of the world that the story takes place in. So that alone, I think, is certainly worthwhile, and if I were to have a dust jacket on a book, this is what I would like to see, something that adds a little value to the book itself. Now, once you remove that dust jacket, what you end up with is a nicely textured hardcover book that has quite a beautiful look to it. It really feels like you're holding some ancient tome in your hand. The back has a little bit of artwork that is quite representative of what you will find once you get inside the book itself. But yeah, very pleasing to the eye and to the touch, which for me, I don't know, something about the touch and feel and even the smell of a new book. Everybody loves the smell of a new book, don't they? The pages themselves within the book have a little bit of kind of a semi-gloss coating to them, but it's not interfering with your enjoyment of the artwork. I find if pages get too glossy, like almost magazine glossy, I find it detracts from the quality of the artwork inside. But these are just right. It's a good paper weight. I'm not quite sure what it is. It's a little thinner than some others I've had, but it's substantial enough, and that slight gloss doesn't detract from enjoyment of the art. The story follows two groups of adventurers 30 years apart from one another. And throughout the book, you have not only the, going back and forth between the two groups of adventurers through time, but you have quite a lot of added content. There are songs which, I'm not a good enough musician to just pick up on what that, what those notes would sound like. I'm sure if someone were more musically talented, they'd be able to sing that for you. I suspect it has a lot of sort of traditional Scottish, kind of Irish kind of feel to it, which is pretty typical. There is also a lot of history, poetry, and historical documents within the book that sort of just add to the depth of the world in which these characters are living and fighting. So I find all of this material quite interesting and entertaining to be included in the book. It almost takes it a little bit beyond being just a graphic novel. It's bordering on, I would call it almost a novella status, and I think would be an interesting read even for people who are not huge fans of graphic novels as an art form. I think they could quite enjoy this, the depth of information that's included in this. The artwork in here, I am very impressed with. There are a number of artists listed, a number of colorists, but Riccardo Federici is the main artist that is listed consistently throughout the book. And as you go through the book, you see just the remarkable skill that he has in rendering human figures, the human anatomy, the facial expressions, the gestures of the hands, even like the monstrous creatures within the book, he does a remarkable job of. I mean, occasionally you run into a face that is not quite right, but for the most part, what you get are really good quality renderings of facial anatomy and expression that just push the story along. I am very impressed overall in the quality of the artwork. I quite like the muted colors within it, and I think when you have all those muted colors, they're not super bright, vibrant colors, but then it really makes the special effects and things kind of pop. When you have sort of areas like this where it's kind of dark, but then you have the bright effects of the magical elements that just really stand out. I'm quite impressed with it overall. What I really like about this artwork in particular is the quality of the rendering. When you look at figures and facial expressions and things like this, it's not really hard, crisp lines. There's a little bit of looseness and roughness and liveliness to it, but it is still a really accurate representation of human anatomy, which I value a great deal. And part of that is the penciler and inkler, but part of it is also the colorist. The colorist is also, building up that figure with their coloring without overdoing the blending of it. If you overdo the blending, it just becomes almost unnatural looking. But this maintains that really nice, natural, slightly flawed and lively rendering that I like to see in artwork. My final thoughts, if you're a fan of fantasy novels, or if you're a fan of graphic novels that exist within a fantasy world, I think you will really enjoy this. I really do. I think this could almost be a bit of a segue from someone who loves fantasy novels to get them into reading graphic novels and comics. But I'm not sure that you're going to find very much more of this quality unless you sort of go and historically go back and look at some older material. All in all, and it's rated for 17 plus as far as ages go, so not for kids. But if you're a fan of fantasy novels, and also, interestingly enough, if you're someone who enjoys Dungeons and Dragons, there is a whole section in the back of this that describes characters and monsters and environments that you can include into your D&D campaigns. So if you're a DM for Dungeons and Dragons campaign, there's a whole world of interesting stuff that you could include in your campaigns that would sort of bring a little freshness to it. It's certainly consistent with what you would normally see in D&D, but it's not exactly the same. It's a little bit unique. So yeah, for mature readers, D&D fans and players, fantasy book lovers, I think this is a great buy. I would highly recommend it. If you want to see more book reviews like this, just like and subscribe and ring that bell, and I'll see you next time.